Navy Matters.
I'm your host, Richard Acritelli, and on today's podcast of The Fog of War and Humanity, we're here to speak with Liam Carballal about American imperialism, U.S. foreign policy, warfare, and the different government actions. Liam, it's good to see you.
Hey, Rich.
How's everything?
Happy New Year. Yeah. Everything's good. My brother's liver transplant is taking, so knock on wood there. Otherwise, I'm good.
Okay, yeah. All right. So hopefully, everything goes well with your brother. It's a tough procedure,
It's been
right?
a lot. Yes, so today I was hoping we could talk about the Spanish-American War and the Philippine-American War and how there seems to be a lot of similarities between what happened 120 years ago and what's going on more recently.
All right, so when we look at the Spanish-American War, what is probably the biggest local aspect of that here?
Well,
That's not too far away from the studios here.
Well, President Theodore Roosevelt, who his career was basically made by that conflict, is from Oyster Bay. His house is in Oyster Bay. There's famous paintings. I actually used to volunteer at Sagamore Hill, so there's a lot of overlap there.
What's your fondest memories of
Sagamore?
Sagamore Hill?
Me just being a weird technical nerd, reading about like Admiral Meehan and the building of the U.S. Navy, his connection to Kaiser Wilhelm and the building of the German Navy, but honestly, it's just a really beautiful place to go visit. It's a little bit of a tourist destination. It's a big open park area. You can visit the house. The house is gorgeous. Learn a lot of neat facts about the president.
It's a pretty cool place because you always hear of how humid Long Island is, right?
Yeah, right.
And it gets hot, right? We're up here by the water.
It was miserable to be inside the building during the summer, but otherwise it's...
But you were surrounded by water over there. You have Cold Spring Harbor on one side, the Sound on the other, Oyster Bay, and it's really just a beautiful location.
Yeah,
right?
it's gorgeous.
Summer White House, it was called.
Yeah, it's on the water. You can
Right.
go inside the building and then go out to the back and see the water. It's great.
Some really pretty spots. Now,
Yeah.
from working there, were there any reminders of the White Fleet, the American Navy that was in the house?
One of my favorite things is apparently the Kaiser and Theodore Roosevelt were friends, and as a gift, and it's kind of a passive-aggressive gift, he gave him a list of all of the American warships in his Great White Fleet, and the displacements and all the military stats. And I just thought it was funny because it's like, oh yeah, it's kind of a nice gift, but it's also like, we know what you have. Don't try anything with us. So it's like kind of like threatening as it is nice.
Sure. Well, the United States at that point, our Navy, right, in terms of the Spanish-American War, was probably the strongest military aspect that we had.
Yep.
And then going into World War I, pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. We owe it to Theodore Roosevelt and him building the fleet.
Yeah, we surpassed the British power in 1943.
Yeah.
Our ships can go out further, longer, they were better trained, and we were starting to get more of them.
Yes.
And, Roosevelt, and his cousin Teddy, his cousin Franklin, were both assistant secretaries of the Navy,
Both
so
Navy.
they kind of had that lineage in them a little bit, right? So now, what's the biggest thing that you like to speak about when you're addressing the Spanish-American War?
Well, I would say a lot of the commonalities between the Spanish-American War and a lot of more recent politics. It was a conflict whose origins are kind of set in a falsehood. It started because an American warship, the USS Maine, had sailed into Havana Harbor. It was there ostensibly to protect American interests, and then it exploded one night. And despite the fact everyone now knows today that it was just an accident, and even at the time, many people suspected it was just an accident, Hawks kept pushing it, making false connections and saying that it was a Spanish attack. and that it was deliberately destroyed by Spanish forces. And I don't know, you can see some maybe similarities between that and the lead up to the war with Iraq, people pushing for a war based on false premises or maybe untrue premises.
Now, there were 3 different scenarios, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the USS Maine.
Yeah.
Right? You had that the Spanish attacked.
Yeah.
Which is highly unlikely because they knew they'd get blamed
They're
for
already
it.
fighting 2 rebellions. Why
Yeah.
would they start a 3rd war?
And the United States is kind of breathing down their necks, right?
Yeah.
The second one was that the Cubans did it
Yeah.
because the Cubans knew that the Spanish would get blamed for it, right?
False flag kind of thing.
False flag, right? And then the third one was what was the third one?
It was just warships of that type were kind of new. Coal is not really a safe material. It sparks, and the Maine was not well designed. They put the ammunition ducts right next to the fire pits. So if there was a very high chance, and we now know that's what happened, the coal fires shot out of the bunkers, and they set fire to the ammunition stores, and it blew the ship up.
That there was a malfunction.
Yes,
right?
it was an accident. It was just bad design.
You think with the Maine blown up, that really kind of led way to all that yellow journalism and
Well, if you read about it, yellow journalism kind of started earlier. There was General Weyler. General Weyler, the butcher, as he was called in the American press, is actually the inventor of the concentration camp. There was a rebellion on the island of Cuba. It started in 1895, and he wanted to separate the rebels from their base of support, i.e. the people. So he built these giant camps to force the civilians to live on, and the rebels could no longer get access to new recruits, food, water, materials. But the camps, they were a human rights disaster.
Yep.
Yeah. So American press at the time was run by, ironically, Joseph Pulitzer of the Pulitzer Prize fame. It's funny, like we call him because the Pulitzer Prize is this great award for great journalism. His newspaper, The World, was a terrible newspaper.
it was opposite.
Yeah, it was a tabloid gossip. He would make stuff up all the time. His big competitor was William Randolph Hearst, and his newspaper was The Journal. And the two of them, they just made up anything they wanted about.
And Hearst was so powerful, right? What does he say? You furnish me the pictures, I'll furnish you the war.
Exactly.
You know? Right?
There's so many funny stories about him. The movie Citizen Kane was based on him, and when he found out about that, he paid thousands of dollars to bribe the Academy to make that movie not win Best Picture that year when that movie came out. It's wild. But yeah, they were mostly printing all these very intense, sensationalized stories about what General Weyler was doing, the butcher. And when the Maine exploded, they just saw the perfect opportunity. They didn't care that more than half of the Navy Department thought it was just an accident.
Yeah.
They just immediately the Spanish did this. We were attacked by an enemy. There is debate about whether or not yellow journalism caused the war.
It couldn't have helped things out, though.
It did not help.
Yeah. Right. So now you look at Roosevelt, local guy, not too far from us.
Yeah.
He was Assistant Secretary of the Navy under Secretary Long. And there's a very interesting story with Roosevelt where Long, I think, was going to the dentist. And said, you're here for a couple hours, just keep the office going. You can even leave here early today, this and that. The moment that Long was out of the office, Roosevelt started firing off orders, painting ships and water and supplies, right?
He tells Admiral Dewey to send the fleet out of Honolulu, which we had just taken control of, to go to Hong Kong and prepared to attack one of Spain's last colonies in the Philippines in case there is a war. Again, he's the secretary, and the guy actually in charge, Commander Long, is just he's at the dentist's office. He's not supposed to be doing this. But, they tried to reprimand Roosevelt the next day. Yeah.
And there was only so much they could say because everything he had done was just about correct, that preparedness, and so now when we finally do declare war, right? Mm-hmm. You have McKinley, and McKinley is an interesting individual because he was, I believe, the last
Civil War veteran
of the Civil War presidents, right? And he's not going to shift so far one way. He's not going to shift so far another way. He's going to be more moderate. And you had the Lôme letter, right? They call him weak and all these things, right?
They call him weak, but his weakness is he just doesn't want to see men die for no reason. So, I mean, do you really want to, like, throw him over a barrel for that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So he's kind of sandwiched between the expansionists who kind of see, right, what the Germans, the British, the French, the Spanish and Portuguese well before that had done, the Russians and the Japanese and the Pacific and Asia. And then his own experiences fighting in the war and understanding that if he goes down that road, he's going to be responsible for sending these soldiers into harm's way.
Yes.
So it's kind of an interesting angle, right? With the and he's also a big business president, so he kind of realizes, right?
There are advantages to having.
So what would be the advantages to going into Cuba?
Well, it's very much the Monroe Doctrine. This is the Western Hemisphere is our sphere of hemisphere. This is a Spanish colony. We are a nation formed from rebelling against colonies, so there's a lot of solidarity, people rebelling against their colonial masters. But, you know, it could also open up new markets. Cuba is virgin territory in terms of economic interests, and we have already some economic interests there already, and we need to protect them.
Sure.
That's why the Maine was in Havana at the time when it exploded.
It's proximity to the United States, Florida, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you look at Cuba today,
and
after Venezuela was taken over and the government's just overrun, they're now saying that Cuba could be next in terms of that was one of their lifelines.
Yes.
Right, for the communist government.
The oil.
Yeah. Do you see any connections in terms of Cuba from 1898 compared to Cuba today?
I mean, the U.S. government hates who's in control there now as much as they did back then. I think just proximity-wise, as you mentioned, it's 70 miles off the coast of Florida?
Yeah, 90, right? So,
and so I think the U.S. just feels like, even though it's technically an independent country, this is our land, it's right next to us, we can't have an openly hostile force right there. I would say, I think it's a little bit of...
And that's the interesting thing. Growing up, I remember the Berlin Wall. I remember people parachuting over it, driving busloads of explosives into it.
And one guy drove a tank through the wall.
You had the border guard in the 1960s look both ways.
Yeah.
Take his rifle, throw it away, and then he had a car waiting for him.
Yeah.
So I was always shocked to see people dancing on the Berlin Wall and drinking champagne and pulling parts of it down, right?
Yeah.
But I'm kind of shocked now that Cuba is still communist.
Yeah.
Which is, you think about Cuba, right?
It's right off the coast.
It's right off the coast. It's a fairly large country, large population, a lot of agriculture, a lot of industry, right?
Best cigars in the world.
Best cigars in the world. Also, the tourism industry, right? But some of the best snorkeling in the world, right? And it's just, I mean, they got cars from the 40s, 50s, 60s that is their primary cars. Here, they would be going to car clubs, and car shows and stuff like that,
They'd make a killing.
It's something. And they were saying like they still need parts for like the Edsel or whatever the case is there. So now when you look at the war, did you believe that the war was inevitable? It was bound to happen?
I think there were enough forces. I think it was kind of inevitable. Yeah. Like, I think if the United States wants to go to war with a country, it'll go to war with a country.
But at that time in 1898, was it inevitable?
I don't know. I would say no. I think we could have avoided it if it wasn't for the Maine. I think that the Maine exploding really pushed it over the top. It was just like the excuse we needed to go in there. But
you don't believe like it would have eventually happened somewhere else. The tensions were high.
Oh,
The government, like, you look at guys like Roosevelt, right? He's a hawk.
yeah,
Lodge is a hawk. A bunch of them.
yeah.
They know that they can't fight England or Germany.
Well, I think Roosevelt's on.
But Spain was kind of for the taking a little bit, right?
I think Roosevelt is on record as saying we need a war, just any war. So, actually, yeah, I would say it was probably inevitable that we would go to war.
Because you got to remember, the United States is coming up, right?
Yeah.
We're outproducing England that time in 1898.
We had a much bigger population.
Larger population, cities are growing. I mean, we're kind of self-sufficient with our resources.
There were more people in America then there are in Britain now.
Yeah, it's amazing. We're really, back when Washington takes over, we have to learn how to walk before we can run. We're like a little colt or a puppy, right? We're trying to just get our legs under us.
Yeah.
But by 1900, that was the society, the government, the economy, the politics that Hamilton, they envisioned, right?
Yeah.
And it was almost like we were starting a fire on all pistons.
Yeah.
But they knew who we could fire against, right? We had this unbelievable army under U.S. Grant and heck, even under Lee with the Army of Northern Virginia. But
well, I mean, Roosevelt gave us the Roosevelt Corollary.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was definitely, I guess the modern term would be a globalist.
Sure.
He was definitely interested in America projecting out there. So,
outside of our borders,
yes.
right? So what was the biggest thing about the Spanish-American War that always laid a, impact on you, that you like to talk about or you'll read over and over again?
I was kind of surprised to learn that the Battle of Manila is almost every source I read about it. It makes it sound like it was this catwalk, a cakewalk. It was like the U.S. Navy was so much bigger and better and heavier armored. I was reading this book about it recently, and I did not get that impression. Like, yeah, the Spanish fleet was made of wood and it was smaller, but it was based in Manila. They had coastal forts. They had Corregidor.
Sure.
They had sea mines. They had coastal batteries. And Dewey knew all this. The reason we think of it as a cakewalk is Dewey did his research. He knew exactly where the mines were. He knew where the forts were. He also got really lucky. The way he attacked, he went through like a back channel that had fewer mines. And when he got to Manila Harbor, the Spanish fleet had moved to a part of the harbor that had fewer coastal batteries. And he did this weirdly enough because he thought if there was crossfire, it would kill people in Manila City. So he took it to a part where there would be no civilian casualties and where the water was more shallow. So the Spanish fleet, if it sank, which he suspected it would, they could almost just walk back to shore and that there would be fewer casualties. But it was not, if Dewey was a dumber person, it would not have been a cakewalk. The Battle of Manila, it's kind of like that old saying, if you do everything right, it doesn't look like you did anything at all. And he did everything right.
And that was a big battle for the United States because it was so far from our own supply lines.
Yeah.
Even though we reload in Hong Kong and we do have some islands there.
That was an issue in of itself because
you look at Cuba, right?
Hong Kong was neutral. And we had to leave the harbor.
We're leaving out of places in Florida, Louisiana, Texas, right?
Yeah.
We're very close to Cuba.
Yep.
That was not the case when you talk about the Philippines.
No.
Right?
Because Hong Kong is further east than the Philippines, we were actually worried that they were going to be cut off from supplies because the Spanish fleet was closer to being able to intercept like our supply ships. It was actually a pretty big issue.
You know what's pretty interesting about that aspect of the war when you're looking at the Far East, right?
Yeah.
Is that we went in as liberators.
Yes.
And you have, Filipinos who hate the Spanish are giving us intelligence and so on, right?
Yeah.
But we stay as occupiers.
Yes.
And it turns out to be like a brutal occupation. But years down the road, when you look at World War II, the Filipinos kind of say, all right, who do we want to be with? The United States or the Philippines or the Japanese? Today, we've had military bases in the Philippines for years. I think they're starting to come back. Subic, Clark, all over the place there, right?
There was a time when they were trying to get rid of them.
Yeah, and they did for a while, right?
Yeah.
One of the first places that Americans sent soldiers after 9/11 was to some of the Filipino islands.
The Muslims in Mindanao were in rebellion.
Some of the insurgents and stuff like that. And today the Filipinos are gravitating so close to us.
Yeah.
Because they're so concerned about the Chinese, right?
Yeah.
So now, when you look at the Spanish-American War, what's the biggest accomplishment that we're able to do?
Well, we got a colony. The Philippine Islands were, for about 50 years, a U.S. territory. Guantanamo Bay is part of the United States now because of that conflict. We became a world power. That was the first time the United States really defeated a major world power.
We also take Puerto Rico. America's Day starts tomorrow on Guam, right? We have a huge naval base there. And the North Koreans will sometimes say, we have the ability to hit your base, and stuff like that.
I think after that conflict, there was actually an attempt at an amendment to change the name of the United States of America to the United States of the world.
It's one of those things where people kind of started saying, all right, we might be controlling these places, but we don't want to completely annex them.
Yeah.
Right? We go to Hawaii, we plop the American flag down, and we say, now you're with us, right?
Well, that's the interesting thing, and we'll get more into that if we start talking about the Philippine insurrection specifically. Imperialism's kind of expensive. You have to defend these really far-off, isolated territories. You need an army to put down local rebels. You need military bases to defend against other people trying to take
and that's what you said with the Roosevelt-Carly, and then you have big stick policy, the Taft-Dollar diplomacy, right? Is that some of our officers, guys like Chesty Puller, who was unbelievable during World War II, some of his main experience went from going into places like Haiti and the Dominican Republic because they were putting revolts down and they were collecting money that was owed either to us or the Europeans, and they got some
diplomacy.
They got some of their best, military fighting experience within our own back door, right? And it's pretty important. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think of that gunboat diplomacy itself?
I mean, I think we kind of see it today. We just arrested the president of Venezuela.
Yeah, Maduro, right?
They're accusing him of drug charges. He's a terrible person. I don't know much about the drug charges themselves, but I think there's a lot of echoes of what we did 120 years ago.
Do powerful countries from time to time have to do that to remind other nations around the world that we do have interests and we'll protect them or promote them?
I don't know if I would say we have to do it. I don't know. I would say, I don't know. I have to think about that one.
Yeah,
being
honest. I mean, you look at the United States, we carry out a flawless operation to get him, right? Went in, came out. You're always looking at like the Chinese and Russians. They're always kind of pushing.
Yeah.
But they haven't proved that they could do anything.
Oh, so you mean like an intimidation kind of thing?
Well, intimidation, but showing strength, running out of patience, right?
Yeah.
When I was a young guy before going into the Army, we went in and got Noriega, and major drug dealer. He had connections to us, but he just got totally out of hand.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's probably good, right, that a country shows their teeth every so often, right? Depending on how much those teeth come out. Right, the Russians have had their teeth knocked out in the Ukraine, that sort of thing.
I think after withdrawing from Afghanistan, I think some people might have gotten the impression that America is in decline, and I think every once in a while, maybe strategically, it's good to show some teeth.
Yeah.
Just so no one thinks that they can get away.
Yeah, because that was such a disaster. And then 6 months later or 9 months later, Russia goes into Ukraine.
Yeah.
So, from time to time, the United States probably has to flex its muscle. But imperialism, there's really nothing democratic about imperialism, right?
I think as far as gunboat diplomacy goes, this is one of the better outcomes. No one really got. I don't know how many people were killed, but it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a long, bloody quagmire.
Sure.
Yeah.